everyone, this is Leo from the Monkeys Making Misplaced channel. Today we'll be bringing you Vovsarga, the girl with the arms, which is a funny thing to say considering, we all have arms, but that's not a great joke. Vovsarga is a deck that has been receiving support pretty much since it came out, but it's still been pretty lackluster, unfortunately. She just needs a fourth attack. They just need to give her one somewhere, like, just something. At this point, if they were like, oh, she gets to restand with all of her crits and power, I'd just be like, yeah, thank God. She's had to wait for so long. I'm okay with that. But she's got two abilities. The first one's when she's armed, you soul charge 1 and she choose a grade 1 or less from your drop card to rear. And then if this unit is armed with 2 or more cards, you soul blast 2, retire all of your opponent's front row rear guards, and this unit gets a crit until end of turn. You might be wondering, well, what does it mean to be armed? If you didn't know, we'll talk about that really quickly, but Ride Line is her standard Ride Line. It'll get you some of the armed cards that you need, so that's why it's here for. Then onto the grade 3s, we've got 3 copies of Vovsarga in the main deck for Persona Ride, obviously. Now we move on to the arm cards. So the arm cards, there's quite a few, are normal orders that will attach themselves to the Vanguard, either on the left or the right, depending on what it says. So this one is a right deity arm. Sorry, that's a little lower. And it's called the Sealed Blaze Spear at Yatva? Yeah, I don't know. It's a spear. So you play it with a counterblast, and then when it's armed, you draw a card, and then you can put another arm this turn. And then during your turn, the unit armed with it gets +10, which makes your Vovsarga like 23k. You can play 2 of this one because it lets us just play another one right away. This isn't as necessary as it was before. Before you needed like a full set of this because it was the only way to play another arm. But with the other options in this deck, we have other ways to equip an extra arm. Then moving on, we have quite a few one-offs. We have the Hammer, which lets you retire a back row rear guard, then give your Vanguard +10k. And then at the end of the turn, it puts itself in a drop, and then you get to choose a right deity and with a different name from your drop, and you add it to your hand. This one doesn't have a cost to equip, which is pretty good. Then we have Sealed Blaze Sword, which is a Soul Blast 1 to play. When the unit armed with this card attacks, that armed unit gets +10k until that battle. And then at the end of the battle, if your opponent's damage on has 4 or less, you can counterblast 2, put it into drop, choose one of your opponent's vanguards, and you get to deal a damage. Again, pretty cool, pretty versatile. CB2 is quite hefty, but we have other arms. It's here to have the option of it. Then we have the Axe. The Axe again costs nothing to equip, and it gives your Vanguard a guard restriction that forces your opponent to use 2 or more at the same time, so they just can't PG it for free. They gotta use a PG, something else, and then discard for a PG. So that's 3 cards out of their hand. And then at the end of the turn, you can counterblast 1, put this card into drop, choose a card with left deity arms ability and a different name from drop, and armor to your Vanguard. So similar to Hammer, but this one just equips the other one to Vanguard instead of just putting it into your hand. Then we have the Shield. This one costs a CB to equip, but you can just equip it for free with the Axe. Just pitch it on early game, get your Axe, and be all set. But the shield is cool in the fact that it's when the unit armed is attacked, you can give it +10k. Only one time, but hey, it's a free 10k shield, and that you could pretty much get on board for free with your Axe is always really neat. And then the last arm we're playing is, for some reason, in this pantheon of just pretty much medieval weapons, or I guess ancient weapons. You've got lance, mace, axe, you got lance, hammer, sword, axe, shield. You also have a gun. So this one's very, very cool. A lot of people really like it. But you play with the Soul Blast 1. When the unit armed with this card attacks, you can counterblast 2, and the armed unit gets Strife +1 until the end of the battle. And then at the end of the battle, you put that card into your drop. Obviously, this means that you don't get to have shield equipped to your Vanguard to defend yourself, but hey, it's an extra drive. It is CB2, similar to the sword. It is very aggressive. There are definitely ways to play this deck where you're just going to be super aggro, and obviously you could equip a gun and a sword, right? Or you could just do the classic, which is sword and shield, right? But I play one of each of them, especially because of, as you'll see moving forward, there's so much searching in this deck that it's honestly not a big issue to just have one of each copy, because things like Devistia, God, these names are gonna kill me. So when it's placed on rear, you can Soul Blast 1, look at top 7, you choose up to 1 card with Dress Boost ability and up to 1 arms card, each from among them, reveal them, choose up to 1 card from among them, put it into your hand, and then you discard the remaining cards, shuffle your deck. And then when it attacks a grade 3 or greater, if your Vanguard has 2 or more arms, it gets +10. So a 20k attacker pretty much always, as long as you're attacking a grade 3, obviously. And then the ability to fetch yourself an arm. Obviously, you could whiff, and we'll talk about the Dress Boost units soon. But it is another card that essentially you can get 2 cards out of your deck, thinning your deck for increasing the chances of getting a trigger, which is very important when you're only having 3 attacks. You want to pressure as much as you can with Vanguard. But this is one of the cards that just lets you search. And then the other card that is probably one of my favorites is, God, these names are going to kill me. Kangshati? Is that that sounds right. When it's placed on rear from your hand, if you have Vanguard with Valve Saga in its card name, you can Soul Blast 1, discard a card, and you can search your deck or drop for up to 1 arms card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and if you search your deck, you shuffle your deck. So this just lets you get whichever arms you want, and you can just discard an arms to get an arms, which means you can put shield in drop and then get X from deck and then equip X, and then you'll be able to equip shield from drop. You know, this card's so good. And it's even got a second ability that says you can counterblast 1, put an arm from your Vanguard into Soul to draw a card and it gets +5. So if you have an arms card equipped to your Vanguard and you don't want to just get rid of it by equipping another one, you can just turn that into a resource. Not going to happen that often, but if you do have the extra CB, it's always pretty good to just do that. Then moving on to the Dress Boost units, we've got Trick Moon, which is the counterpart to Trick Star for this deck. So when it's placed on back row center from drop, you countercharge 1, which you can pretty much accomplish with Valve Saga. So you can countercharge 1 pretty much every turn, thankfully. But the Dress to Boost ability. So the ability it's just more of a keyword. It doesn't mean like you have to do something specific to Dress Boost. It's just ability that triggers based on like something. But it's always when it boosts, right? So when this unit boosts, the boosted unit gets plus 10k until end of that battle for each card your Valve Saga is armed with, right? So technically it doesn't need to be behind Vanguard for that ability to trigger, so you can just give one of your other rear guards plus 20k as long as your Vanguard has 2 arms. So Dress Boost doesn't really have anything, like, it's not similar to like regular overdress where you just have to, you know, do things to be in the overdress state. Dress Boost just kind of happens. And then following that, now that I've talked about overdress, we have Trick Moon's evolution, Virelord. So this is Trick Moon's counterpart to Virina. So it's got quite a couple effects. The first is that it can't be chosen by your opponent's card effect. So if you're playing against Shiranui with this deck, I don't know why you would be, but you could. They can't dominate this unit, so you get to just keep it, which is pretty cool. Then when it's placed on rear by the overdress ability, and to overdress you just need to place this on a Trick Moon. You can counterblast 1, choose up to a total of 2 armed cards from your hand or drop, arm 1 to your Vanguard from among them, and then put the rest into your Soul. So it gives you some extra Soul, and you can get an extra arm card. Again, another reason that we really love this deck. Or I really like playing one of each because you can have access to whichever one you need pretty much all game. And then it also has Dress Boost similar to Trick Moon. So when this unit boosts in the overdress state, all of your front units get plus 5k until end of turn for each card your Vanguard is armed with. So instead of Trick Moon's giving the unit it's boosting like a big power, this one gives your whole front row a lot of power. So essentially you get to Persona Ride right away if you're going first, in a sense, right? Because your front row will get plus 10k as long as you have 2 arms cards, which is really cool. You're usually trying to dig for these. If you can get at least one of these, you should be pretty good, because I mean they can't remove it. It's going to sit behind Vanguard, so they can't even attack it. It kind of just gets to stick on the board. Then 2 copies of Sealed Blaze Dragon Samadhi. So during your turn, if your Vanguard has 2 or more arms, it gets plus 5, so it's a 13k booster. If your Vanguard has an arms, you can retire it, choose an arms card from your hand or drop, arm it to one of your Vanguards. If you arm the card, you cannot arm your Vanguard until end of turn. So you just get to equip an arms for free. Obviously you can't equip after that, but it's pretty fine. It's also able to get from drops, so it's a really good card. Not a full set, because sometimes, you know, you've seen we have plenty of cards to arm or to just get us that don't restrict us into not being able to arm anymore after that, because sometimes we want to play, you know, maybe like 3 or 4 arms a turn. Well, maybe not 3 or 4, but sometimes you have to kind of cycle through a couple to get what you really want. And then we have 2 copies of Seal Break Dragon, one of the few cards in this deck that is not like a Seal Blazed Dragon or a Trick Moon variant. This card has a pretty unique effect. So if your Vanguard has an arms card, you can put this into Soul, choose a Sealed Blaze Sword or a Sealed Blaze gun from your Vanguard, and the cost of all the original auto abilities of that card is reduced by Counterblast 1 until end of turn, which means that this makes it so that your extra drive only costs a CB, or being able to damage your opponent's Vanguard only costs 1 CV, right? Which is pretty cool, because you can kind of force your opponent to be like, well, I have to take it to go to 5, or risk it to go to 5 so that I don't just get shot for free, or he's just going to get an extra drive for a CV, as well as being some extra soul, which the deck does kind of need. If you noticed, quite a few of our cards cost some soul, but with things like Virelord and things like this, you could even activate this ability if you have no targets just to get that extra soul, which I think is pretty good. Only 2 copies, because obviously we only play 1 gun and 1 sword. Then we get into the, obviously, as expected, we've got 3 regular PGs, Blitz PG, nothing too special here. Whoops, sorry, bumped the mic there a little bit. Dragon Empire OT, because restanding Vav Saga is the only way we get a 4th attack. 3 draw triggers to draw some extra cards. There's not a lot of shield in this deck, so we want to draw as many cards as we can. Then we've got a full set of crits. The soul crits are actually kind of important in this deck. If you really need soul, these might actually come in handy. So just know that you might want to invest in soul crits if you're playing this deck. And then obviously we're playing for heal. The deck is pretty fun. It just, like most decks, this is one of the few decks that is like so good, and it's got so many good, interesting cards, but it's being held back by the fact that there's no 4th attack. There's no way to get a 4th attack outside of like high rolling and getting the Dragon Empire OT, right? Technically, I guess you could play the red OT to, you know, restand a rearguard, but why would you want to restand a rearguard when you could just restand your Vanguard, right? If it's going to be the same, leave it up to chance. You'd rather restand Vav Saga, especially with her gaining a crit. The deck really needs a restander of some sort. I don't know what they could do, but it needs a way to get a 4th attack so that it can properly compete. Also, we have now gotten our Bracing Angel Ladders. So we have these. They might see play in some decks. I was going to play it in this deck, but we play so many orders that I didn't think it was worth it. And if you're playing this against Shiranui, you're not going in there with the confidence of 1,000 men, right? You're going in there thinking, I'm gonna get Dragon Empire OT and I'm gonna send this man to God. But you know, with that, this has been Leo. I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you next time.